Yo, what up, fam? It's Brian coming at you. Hey, first off, I would like to send my condolences to George Floyd and his entire family. The murder that happened last week was a travesty to the highest order. Um, First thing, I did not watch the video. I knew emotionally for me it wouldn't be something good for me to watch, so I chose not to. However, I have read about it a lot. My wife watched it. She gave me a play-by-play rundown of what it was, and I was almost brought to tears just by hearing about it. So, um, I am not a first-hand account, from the video of what it is. However, I did want to just comment on being a black man in America and what that means to me. And I was inspired to, I wanted to do this video. I haven't done one in a while, and I thought this was a good time to do it. A good friend of ours that is white, Caucasian, she texted my wife and she was just like, hey, we just want to let you know we're here for you and we love you and your family. And that really showed me how open people's eyes, minds, hearts, ears are right now. And so I thought it would be very important to make a video, not necessarily even for black people, but really for whites and non blacks, just to understand where we are coming from, where a black man like myself is coming from. Now, first off, I don't have necessarily experience of being pulled over, of having being afraid to go outside, afraid to drive at night, anything of that nature. I know some people do. That is not my story. It's a little bit different, and because of that, I was actually a little bit afraid to make the video because I can tend to have different types of thoughts that I know other people share, but not necessarily the same thoughts and sharing it in the same way that others share it. But I want to share my truth and what I think and feel. And if you can relate to that, then great. If not, then take time to learn from somebody else's perspective. Um, so first off, I'm 39, or 38. I'll be 39 this year. I grew up in Missouri. I live in California currently. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, not far from where Ferguson happened. Well, kind of a little far, but the city's big and small, and you kind of travel different places. But definitely, I am familiar with that area. Um, like I said in the beginning, for me, um, I wasn't so much of a. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my little thingy here. Oh, all right, cool. We're plugged in. No battery issues. So, like I said in the beginning, I am not so much of a um, I didn't grow up being afraid of the police. My mom, I don't remember her talking to me so much. What do you do when you get pulled over and things of that nature? For me, it was a lot of, um, my mom was very big into being proud of who you are. She made us memorize the Black national anthem. We learned who our Black leaders were. We learned a lot of songs and slogans, and I'm Black and I'm proud, and that was really good. Because I never grew up despising being Black or anything like that. I loved it, and to this day, I love it. So that's really good. I think as far as how we dealt with other races, we definitely grew up in a Christian household. So a lot of the things we were taught was definitely love and acceptance and things of that nature. However, growing up in Missouri, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was the only slave state to stay in a union during the Civil War, there was a lot of different race relations. And my mom and dad, they went through black only drinking fountains, white only bathrooms, and things like that. And they remember it and tell me the stories very vividly. So that's very real for them and for me as well, because they told me the stories. And so I'm like, yeah, that happened, just a few years ago, not that long ago. So their trust for white people was not high, to say the least. Um, and I think, I definitely didn't grow up hating white people. I had white friends and things of that nature. However, there was definitely this attitude of, hey, you got to be very cautious, around uh, around white people, and the message that I got not only from my parents but also just from society is that white people have and black people do not, and I grew up in an area where it was very poor, and I've before I grew up in a poor area, I was actually more in a middle class, upper middle class black neighborhood. But then some things transpired. The whole crack epidemic, to be honest, transpired with my parents, and that kind of, you know, changed the whole thing. So, um, so yeah, that's what I saw. I saw that white people were able to do things that I just didn't have any experience. And so, from my perspective on the whole, what racism was for me, it wasn't necessarily what happened to me, but it really stemmed from slavery and what I didn't experience, right? So, for instance, just little things like, watching TV and seeing white people eat around a table, seeing them take vacations, seeing them know their heritage and history, like, oh, yeah, such and such is from this place, and we came over, and, New York on the harbor, and we have, relatives in this country and things like that, or our native language is this and that, right? I didn't necessarily grow up with that, and a lot of my, black peers did not as well. I think the other thing, seeing the mother and the father in the home, I had my mom and dad in the home. A lot of my peers did not. I think the whole crack epidemic, like I had alluded to earlier, really hit my family hard. My mom and dad were a part of that. They were on crack cocaine for a lot of their lives in their early 20s. So during the 80s and things like that, and a lot of my peers understand that, and I need to do more research on that. That's something I'm very interested in, but that really hit my family hard, and a lot of black families it really hit. So, um, racism necessarily again wasn't necessarily that something that was done towards me. Getting pulled over, beat, called a nigger and things of that nature. That didn't happen to me, right? But I had a really really great talk with my wife March 1st, the day after Black History Month, about what does that really mean to me. And I've always felt kind of confused for Black History Month because I'm like, okay, I feel like we're here, nothing's happening. I have a good job, I'm in a living in a nice area. But when we really start talking about our families, and what we don't have that the other side, that our European white brothers and sisters have, it was different. Just simple things like I said before, really affected what who we are today. Again, having parents where it's like you have parents and grandparents who have money or passing you down homes, and things like that. That's just something I don't relate to. My parents don't have money and passing me down homes and things. They would love to. My mom, my dad, they love me to death, but they don't have access to those things. Nor do my grandparents. Knowing a language, that's really big. Language and culture. There is some culture, from blacks that we have. A lot of it stems from slave culture. The soul food and things like that, which is great. But a lot of that stems from slave culture, and that being passed down is not, there's not a lot that's passed down, for that, at least for my family. So language, I mean, there's only English. There's no other language outside of that connects us, so that's a big one. So, I think for me, that's how racism really affected me. When you look into black codes and that we couldn't purchase homes in certain places, and then you look into why those things happen. Why don't we have these tighter knit families and these bigger support systems that whites and even some non-whites have? And it came from systemic racism, which is a situation where you're not saying, hey, I'm just going to let you do your thing, you be good over here, right? If that was the case, then right after slavery, I think black people, we would have totally been fine. But what happened was, it was like, hey, we're going to let you go, but on top of that, we're going to push our thumb on you and not allow you to be the best version of yourself. And that's literally what happened through the law. So there were laws that passed that said, hey, you can't live in certain places. Whether you're in, and has nothing to do with being lazy, being a thug. I mean, this is before all of that crazy stuff, being on drugs, all before all of that. We're talking hardworking Black families that wanted to live in Orange County or that wanted to live in a nice neighborhood in New York City. It was illegal. They literally could not. And so they were forced to live in other places. And that really affected, a lot of things. And you go back further with the whole, slavery and just how families were torn apart. And so there was never able to be a strong family support system. And to this day, in a lot of Black families, it's just not a strong support system, right? And I know, again, all cultures go through this. Of course they do. But Blacks go through it very, very differently. And that may offend some people to say, well, everybody goes through that. But not everybody has been enslaved for 400 years, and their families and cultures have been torn apart. And that has ramifications to this day, like I mentioned, just different things that we don't have and that we do, a lot of us do share in common of, again, not having, both parents and seeing a strong marriage in a household. Again, something simple as not eating together, if at the table and we all sit down and we're having these conversations, not having the financial piece, not owning a lot of property, not having a lot to pass on and help the next generation. So that's how it's affected me and my family, and I think with the whole George Floyd thing, emotionally, again, I didn't watch the video. I'm not so like, you know, protesting and upset about the whole situation. Emotionally, I'm not. Mentally, I'm like, hey, that's not good. And, I don't agree with it, obviously. But I think when I think about, what racism is and the conversations that we're having, the reality is this goes much deeper than even what happened to George Floyd, in that whole situation, as horrible as it was. That's just really the tip of the iceberg and a result of what happened in this country's original sin, which was slavery, that we're still affected by to this day. And so, you know, the question always is, where do we go from here, right? Like, how do we move forward, and what do we do with this knowledge? And for me, I've decided to be the best I can be. If you follow my channel, I'm a Christian. I love God. I believe in following Him, doing what's best, doing the best that I can do, and that's really my faith is very, very important to me, and I think it's helped me in a lot of ways. To build family even outside of my physical family, to build closer with my physical family, to do things the right way so that I can make a living, for my wife and kids. And so all of that is really great, even though, again, there are a lot of things that are not great that are happening. So my faith definitely helps me a lot. And I think the thing for white people to understand is that Black people, we are a culture who really just wants to be heard. As much as intimidating or whatever that we can come across, or aggressive, especially with the protests and rioting, we really just want to be heard. We have systemically been marginalized and put down for hundreds of years, hundreds, without an acknowledgement. Like, I had to explain to my son tonight, like, about racism and about slavery. And one thing that came out of my mouth, and it was hard to say, but I was like, hey, white people in America put us into slavery. They let us go, and they never said sorry for it. You know what I mean? And that was hard for me to say. I mean, I have white friends, and I'm a business owner. I have white clients. I don't have a personal agenda against them, but that's the reality. It's the truth. Is that there was never an apology. And do I feel like every white person needs to go around saying sorry? I don't think it's that type of thing that we're looking for, but just an acknowledgement, of what's going on, and acknowledging like, hey, these people have been pushed down. It's not that, oh, we let them go from slavery and let's get over it and catch up. It's that, hey, no, we've been X'd out, literally legally X'd out for multiple years. And just to I think understanding, if you read any kind of self-help books and things of that nature on resolving conflict, the first part is just listening and really doing your best to repeat back what you hear and what you understand from that. And it requires a little bit of research, and I think that's where it comes in. We're all helping each other out, and that's what true help is. So I would say to any white person watching this, what can I do? I think the first thing is understand. Nobody's asking for anything from you per se, but I think the first step is to understand, what the deal is and what the situation is. And of course, it's not all life consuming. There's a lot of things to life. But this is a big thing as we see with people rioting. I think this has even opened my eyes to see like, whoa, this is bigger. Because sometimes I can feel like, oh man, it's, we're good. Everything is great. And, we're, things happen here and there, but we're seeing all these looters and rioters, and as horrible as it is, they're tearing up my city in Long Beach, and I don't like it. But I'm like, man, that's coming from somewhere, and it reminds me of the things that have happened and the things that have not been resolved. And so it's very important that that we work together to resolve those things. Me, through giving the information and the knowledge of like, hey, this is where we're coming from, right? And then for the other half, for the whites and non-whites to say, to step back and just listen and do their best to put yourself in our shoes and to understand. So that's my response. I feel like I have a lot more to say. It's not all coming, but I just wanted to make a quick video here. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a comment. I love to talk about this kind of stuff. I'll probably end up making a follow-up video. I hope I don't get smashed on social media for something I said that maybe is not clear or somebody doesn't agree with. But hey, we all have our perspectives, and I think this is a time that we should be emboldened to share our story and where we come from and what we're feeling. Somebody else may have a completely different perspective. So share your story. And if you're a white or non-black person, listen. All right. Love you guys. Peace.